talking about association, people have come, and so it's based on work that we've done. We're based starting in our community, but we've had the privilege of doing it from some pretty hardcore radical activists right to government missions from Korea and places, so it's quite interesting. What I will say is most of what we do is about working in sort of closed workshops, and here we are at a festival site where everyone's it's to be interactive and people are welcome to come and go. So we're going to freestyle a little bit, so bear with us. So I'd just like to point out a few things that we've got there. I think one jewel that came out there was the idea of it's about bringing people together and seeing what we can make happen. And that's really the spirit in which sort of transition work is undertaking, and de facto the REconomy work as well. What we've got up there, it's behind the pillar there, there's lots of pillars in this beautiful new barn, but it says who are we, where are we, what do we know, what do we want to learn to discover. So we'll make this as interactive, but if you're coming and going, it'd be great to leave your mark here, because what we're really keen always to do is to tap into, the rather pretentious term we use in transition is the collective genius, which sounds a bit up your, but it captures it perfectly, that there's enormous skill and genius in the collective of people that come. So please do, and we'll keep looking at that during the day. What do you really want to get out of this forum today? Okay, so instead of stopping and starting all the way to run that as a process like one would do in a session, please do leave your mark up there. We got some information about the REconomy project in Totnes in particular, and a little bit referencing REconomy as it's happening nationally, internationally through Transition Network. And Johnny's got some Stir magazines there. Are they for sale, Johnny? Or,
yeah, £2 each.
£2 each. Pressure Festival price. Okay. All right. Good. So that's generally what's going on around here. And I'll just be helping Jay do what he does normally. But today, it's the first time I've seen Jay since his operation. So if you think I'm being cruel, I've got a load of jokes to get out of the way. So first of all, I'm going to introduce him as the semi-bionic man. Yeah. Okay. All right. So go on.
All right, well, thanks. So I guess the question for the day really is, I don't remember what it says in the program, something about how to shift your local economy or something like that. Johnny, that was really great. I mean, you covered a lot of ground there, and I think one of the other big takeaways is just how much in flux everything is at the moment, and how the nature of our economic system is just collapsing here and kind of growing a new kind of nodule over here, and the kinds of new models that you were talking about are part of that kind of bubbling and fizzy innovation that you get when you're moving from one kind of state into the next, or when you're in that edge space. So, the big question for us in Totnes and in the context of our local economy and the kind of work that we've been undertaking to try to make our community more resilient and more sustainable is how can we kind of work with those energies of change, and how can we kind of catalyze change in the direction that we'd like it to go in. So we know we have an economic system now that is global and dominated by big corporations. It doesn't work for everyone. It's destroying the biosphere and so on. So what can we do to start making some changes? What can we do in our little neck of the woods? And where do we begin? For me, what's become clear, I think first I should say that, Hal and I are here. We're not the only ones. So it's not like this is something we thought up and are leading on alone in Totnes. There's lots and lots of people doing this kind of work, and lots of people doing similar work in other parts of the Transition Network and in other networks and in other places. And we sort of beg, borrow, and steal ideas from everywhere. But what's become clear for me is that kind of the question is, all right, if we want a new kind of economic system, then we have to create the conditions for new economic actors and new economic relationships to emerge. And that's kind of, for me, that's kind of emerged as this sort of guiding principle behind all the stuff that we're doing and thinking about doing. So, all right, anybody into permaculture? One or two or three? Okay, so maybe the first thing you do in permaculture is just kind of sit back and watch what's going on. But one of the other next things you do is you sort of assess what you have to work with. So that was one of the first things we did, wasn't it, Hal?
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah.
So we've been at it now in Totnes for about 5 years. The Totnes REconomy project, I think, emerged from a little theme group of people who were interested in economics and new livelihoods and new enterprises about 5 years ago. And one of the first things that we did, one of the first questions we asked is, okay, great, well, we want to create some economic change. What does stuff look like now? What do we have to work with now? What are the trends? What are the opportunities for relocalization and so on? And we launched a project that we called the Local Economic Blueprint. Do we have a visual aid?
Yeah, we do.
So, I'll say a few words about this project, and then maybe we can get some practice thinking about it in pairs or in small groups. But it was kind of two things, really. So, one was that it was a project to assess local economic conditions. So we looked at 4 key sectors that we thought would be important for building local economic resilience and long-term sustainability in our community. The food sector, kind of the foundation of everything. We looked at housing and what we could do to make the housing stock more efficient. We have a high rate of fuel poverty in our area. We looked at energy and the capacity to generate clean energy from local resources. And the 4th sector we looked at was health and care. So that was one big part of the work. But the other big part of the work was to engage local leaders. So it wasn't just about doing an assessment and doing the research and creating a report that would just sit on the shelf, but we engaged members of the town council and the district council, some of the other key nonprofits working in the town, the schools, and we all sort of went on a learning journey together. And we found out some interesting things along the way. So for example, in the food sector, in Totnes, we live in a very agricultural area. But 2/3 of the spending for food in Totnes goes to one major and one minor corporate supermarket. So if you're interested in sustainability, if you're interested in food security, knowing that 2/3 of your food supply is connected to the global supply chain and to corporate providers, that should give you pause for thought. The other thing we found out is that about 75% of our foodstuffs don't even come from our local area, our local producers. They're all coming from elsewhere. So we thought, okay, well this is really interesting. This is going to wake some people up, and maybe create some opportunities for doing things differently. One of the other aspects of so much spending going to the local supermarket is that money leaves the town almost immediately. So if we could create some shifts in people's buying patterns and create some more local producers, more of that wealth could stay in the town, and along the way we'd be reducing the economic or the ecological footprint of our food system at the same time. Should we add anything else about the blueprint?
But you worked through and you developed a vision for the local economy.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things we found out about the research. But the other thing we did, which I forgot to mention, in bringing these other people together for this learning journey, and this is pretty important, I think, is that we all kind of talked about what we'd like to see from our local economy, and we agreed a really kind of simple vision statement that's also provided a bit of a guidepost for what we're shooting for. And it's encapsulated in this this sentence. The purpose of our local economy is to maximize the happiness and well-being of our entire community, to create an abundance of opportunity to satisfy our needs and use and distribute resources fairly in a way that respects natural limits. Does anybody think that's radical? It's pretty mom and apple pie at one level. Some people who have experience with local councils and local politics are like, oh my God, you got members of the town council and the district council to agree to that? Yeah, we did. And that was really kind of nice because it kind of reframed the whole work and it reframed the whole activity. And I think that idea of reframing and kind of creating the foundations for new storytelling and new narratives is really an important part of all this.
So it's a lovely question to put to people as well. So if you ever find yourself in front of a group and not wanting to know where to start and how you frame all this, often put the question, particularly to students, it's like, what's the economy for? Just put that question to them straight away, and everyone immediately goes, well, it's obvious, isn't it? Says, right, is it? Yeah, good, well, tell us. Yeah, and people come up with all these sort of reasons, they're tripping over themselves for a couple of minutes, and they go, actually, yeah, that is a really good question. So we say, okay, let's just put pens down for a minute, let's start again. We've just decided through austerity across Europe to prioritise the economy over pretty well absolutely everything else for the last 6-7 years or whatever it is, and we haven't stopped to ask, actually, what's it for? Yeah, and so can sort of throw it back to them, and that's a kind of a more aggressive, confrontational way than maybe we might approach it with our very conservative district councillors. But it's the same kind of process we go through. Is let's take it back to the drawing board and build back again. Because if we've then got an idea of what the economy's for, we're much better able to hold it to account. And then together you've been on a journey where you can properly critique it in a constructive way, rather than if you come straight in critical of the economy, you're going to kind of create those traditional established political lines that exist. They're just going to see, well, we're Tories, you're not, so therefore these are our lines. Actually, when we start talking on a values level in a very conservative rural area, which the West Country is, despite it being this apparent hotbed of radical new economic thinking, it's probably outside of Yorkshire the most conservative part of the country you can be in. It's that's the tempo, that's the language, that's the methodology we've got to match culturally in order for our work to be going anywhere. So it's nice to take people on that journey. Then together we are critiquing, because there's quite a lot of critical councillors in there, and they just maybe haven't shared the analysis with us. Yeah. Okay.
So we did this work. We did the analysis of what our local economic system looked like, and we identified opportunities to create some shifts. So, for example, in the food economy, one of the things we identified was the opportunity to create some kind of a behavior change campaign, and that's become the 10% shift campaign, which is just getting started in Totnes, and the idea is to get people to shift 10% of their spending away from the supermarket to a local shop. It's led to us starting up an incubator and co-working space in the town called the REconomy Center, and we'll probably say a few words about that in a moment. Johnny, you were talking about more and more people getting into freelance work, and Mike, you mentioned, well, we're great, so where are all these people going to get the training and the support to maybe start up their own business or something like that? Well, that was kind of the idea behind this incubator. I'll say more about it later if you want, but basically it's self-managing. We got a hold of the building rent-free from the district council because of this blueprint work. So it's very accessible. So
is it still free? Is that?
Well, it's pay what you can. Pay what you can. So we identified opportunities then for shifts to happen in the blueprint work, and we got to the end of the journey, and these people that we had taken along with us, we said, great, how can you support us? The district council gave us the office. Some of the other folks contributed some other things. Just wondering if maybe we could do a little interactive thing now, So in identifying these opportunities, some of those opportunities you might frame in terms of import substitution. Has anyone heard that term before? Yeah, it's been an important idea in development economics for decades. Basically, the idea is instead of importing stuff, you can make it yourself. So that doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you can go from a standing start to making your own video cameras or computers, but, you know, if you had a tradition of making something before, why couldn't you start making it again? So, how do you guys feel about maybe just kind of pairing up or in small groups, just kind of sharing some ideas about what you know right now about local economic conditions here in your area, about what some of those opportunities might be? What are you importing now that you maybe could start making again? Does that sound okay?
This is not food, Jane. This is kind of...
It could be food, it could be things, it could be furniture, it could be textiles, it could be building materials, it could be video cameras and cars. Just a couple minutes, you know, and you might get to know each other too. That's okay.
In terms of getting to know each other, I know some of you folks have taken lead and put a name on. There's some labels going around. If you're here for a bit, it's nice to put first names on, and we can launch straight in and talk to each other in our first names and bypass a few steps of breaking the ice.
Just talking about what are those things that we're bringing into our local economy that we might be able to do ourselves. What are some of the things that you guys came up with in your little conversations?
We felt that the food argument is fairly obvious. You need to grow food locally. So my experience is in healthcare and the NHS, and we were trying to come up with a way that you could do that, and it really comes down to people taking more responsibility for their own health. Other than that, it becomes a really difficult conversation to have. Yeah, we were kind of stuck around how you would do it.
In terms of medicine, there's a lot of stuff around the open sourcing of medicine now. So locally manufacturing medicine could provide jobs and... You know.
One of the biggest problems in the healthcare sector is the fact that
the monopolies,
the fact that they get the pharmaceuticals get that however many years of they can manufacture it, and only they can manufacture it. Once it's open source, then absolutely local manufacture might be an option.
Well, you know, pharmaceuticals aren't the only aspect to think about. I was just in the hospital, and a lot of the food they were feeding me came from all over the place. There's a model coming out of the States, kind of variously known as the Evergreen model or the Cleveland model, where some folks said, you know what, we need to provide an opportunity to put people back to work. We're going to start up a co-op, and we're going to do laundry services. And we're going to go provide laundry services to the hospital, because we know the hospital is kind of rooted in our community. It's an anchor institution. It's anchored. It's not going to go anywhere. Went to the hospital and said, you want to raise well-being in the town, in our city of Cleveland? Shift your laundry services from the big multinational to us. They did. They started making money, and then they built what I think is maybe one of the largest greenhouses in the States. Now they're providing greens to the hospital. They started an energy co-op. So there's many pathways. Anybody else? Yes.
Well, we were with I think it's something you do, not necessarily. We were just talking about the fact that actually to make something, we have a very good company which makes circuits and circuit boards, but they couldn't, you know, they're only one part of the whole chain. All the other stuff is done probably all around the world. But actually repairing things, and you know, you could repair things like mobile phones and that. And you mentioned a company in London, Restart, which actually trains, as well as doing it themselves, will train people in how to repair slightly more complicated things. I think you're talking about. It's not just, you know, you've got things which will teach you to repair very simple things, but I don't know many organisations which help repair slightly more technical things, like mobile phones.
And I think it's really important touching on hardware. So a lot of the platform co-op movement, which is looking at digital economies, you're mainly talking about software, so what you use online. But what those cooperatives rely on is a lot of very exploitative hardware, which comes from Asian sweatshops, African blood minerals and so on. So hardware's the other side that we need to, let's say, offline co-ops or the cooperative movement in general could start producing for these digital platforms.
But there's a great example in Scotland called MakeWorks, and they've created this kind of library of many different manufacturers in Scotland. So if you want to source something locally, made locally, you go to this library and you kind of source the place that you want to get your manufacturing from. But I think it's really inspiring to see everything in one space, and then obviously connections start to be made between different kinds of manufacturing operations.
What else did anyone come up with? All your towns have bakeries. Anybody mention textiles? Making textiles from hemp or from nettles?
The Redport is the rope industry, but in the 50s they invented nylon, and therefore you have to convince boats that use it that actually you can go back to natural material. So it's not necessarily as strong.
Flat pack furniture? Yeah, maybe. There are loads of things actually, and some of the new technology, some of the stuff that you were talking about, Johnny, but also some of the new manufacturing methods, 3D printers and so on, computer-controlled machines for sawing wood and so on.
Anyway, what are the two places? Where are you from, sir? But you said, yeah.
I'm from Crediton.
Crediton, okay. And where was the healthcare conversation from?
I'm from Exeter.
From Exeter, okay, thank you.
And what you said about hospitals being a sort of something rooted in community and local. So I'm from Oxford and thinking about two big universities in Oxford and also all the schools. So basically, I hadn't thought of that. So basically, you just provide all the food, laundry, basic services for those massive institutions.
Yeah.
So we published a piece on councils and cooperatives in this Future of Work issue, and local councils spend something like £80 billion a year, and lots of them are starting to get a lot more progressive about their procurement strategies. So if you are pushing local enterprise, social enterprise, then a really good place are the anchor institutions, because local government spends lots of money which could be shifted to this
Why not a
economy.
cooperatively owned alternative to GS4 or something like that?
Exactly. And you get
I
competitive.
suppose the question is then, sorry, because I feel like I'm outing myself now, because I do actually work for Devon County Council in public health, but the thing that will, I suppose, break this myth down for me, but the thing that, is about the governance, so when you start looking into things like providing a community-based G4S service or working with hospitals and starting to work around anybody that is termed in any way vulnerable, you start to get all those governance issues. So where's, what's the model for that?
Lots. There are so many models. So cooperative model is one. And with some of these other models, you have more accountable governance than you would with a corporation. So just about anything is better than what we have now. But with a cooperative model, you can structure it in all kinds of different ways, such that the whole community has a voice, or various key stakeholders are part of the cooperative.
Yeah, so some examples from what's been called spinning out. So when local government departments become public service mutuals, i.e. cooperatives. Leading Lives are in Suffolk. They provide care, domiciliary care, and they spun out of local government back in 2012 with 300 employees. They've now got 450 employees. Loads of youth service mutuals. So lots of councils said in Liverpool, London and places like that, we can't afford to run these services. So they spun out, they retained some of the public contracts, but then as community interest companies, community benefit societies, as co-ops in general, they were able to take public contracts, public money, they were able to run it as an enterprise, a business, to create income for themselves, and also access grants, which local government can't. So there are some really positive models.
Okay, so
can I reference something else in our programme that's happening today? So I think it's at the last session, we're looking at politics. We've got a Devon County councillor coming, He's Liberal Democrat. He's had a few flirtations with the Green Party as well, to and fro. So he might have some good perspectives on that as well, because a lot of this is how much actually are hospitals or schools allowed to source food locally and all that sort of thing. So it's interesting when these sort of conversations start to mesh with the sort of political infrastructure. So I hope maybe that's a conversation we can have at the end of the day. Yeah.
So just, okay.
In Bridport, school food was all being prepared actually in Northumberland and driven down to London, heated up, driven down to Bridport, then distributed. And a group of people did, led by Tim Cranberry and one of others, did make a local food group, and they started making this stuff. The trouble is that it then gets sent out to schools to get reheated, and they're not allowed to put salt in or sugar. So it's very bland. And the amount of stuff that gets thrown away is just terrible, And we've tried to sort of set some schools have tried to get a bit more local and say, right, we're going to source our own stuff. And certainly the school we're involved in, it's they source their own stuff, and it's actually within the budget they're able to produce fresh food and cook it actually there. But, so that centralisation doesn't always quite work, or
Right.
localisation doesn't really work.
Well, it all depends.
One thing I was really interested in is just thinking of similar lines of what are they actually teaching in universities? And it's mentioned the universities in Oxford, and I thought, I've heard so much great stuff coming out of Totnes and various things around the country. But if we're sort of in a bubble teaching this, and then the universities, are they embracing it? Are they including this in their education? Or are they just going down the old standard big business model, which is what then you've got the business managers and the MBAs, and they're just not getting it until later in life, and the whole system's going in one direction while we're trying to chip away at the other.
Well, that takes us a bit off topic, but a few years ago, economics students at universities reacted very strongly to the mismatch of the education they were getting and the realities that they were living, and they started something called Rethinking Economics, and that's created some change in the university system. But that's a whole other topic. So we're running out of time. So we've talked a little bit about assessing your local economy. Johnny, you guys are just about ready to get started with your own project in Bridport.
Yeah.
Can you say 30 seconds worth about that?
So taking lead from the fantastic work that REconomy are doing in Totnes, and really the need for hard data. So anybody who does community activism, local work, obviously sees the need to have hard data that you present to your local community, to local government, to local enterprise. So we've started research on a Bridport local economic blueprint. How can Bridport feed itself? And we're basically basing it on the skeleton that Totnes produced, which again I talked about the code base of Fairmondo being shared. The work that they're doing in Totnes as well is being shared, so that we don't have to start from scratch again. But the idea is again that we can use this data in this document as a really strong case for an incubator to make lots of recommendations and proposals about changing the local food system. So I think you'll be about the fifth or sixth community now who's taken on this particular model of the blueprint. It's not the only way to go about doing this kind of thing in your community, but the more that people kind of follow this particular path, I think the easier it gets and more of a community of practice develops around it. And we can do it on a very small budget.
But you mentioned something that I think is very important, which is that it's a credibility builder. So even if you already know what to do, you're building an evidence base. When you have an evidence base, and if you're in local government and someone presents you with research, very hard to refute it unless you want to go out and do your own research. So it does provide some persuasive power, and it also helps you to pursue some of your other projects. So we talked about the 10% Shift campaign. Before we started that, we were already trying to get people to embrace local coffee so that we could keep out a local Costa coffee chain, and we created this really nice map. And on the back, we seeded it with some of the things that we learned from doing the blueprint. So just another reason for kind of doing this extra bit of of work.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So you did the blueprint in 2011?
We started the work for the blueprint in late 2011, and we published our summary report spring of 2013.
So if you could say 3 things that have come out that have been supported by that evidence base, best 3 things.
So the things that have come out of that report, one is we acquired some space for the incubator and co-working space, which we call the REconomy Center, which is now kind of home base for our work. Second thing is this 10% shift campaign and funding for another food enterprise. And the third thing is the launch of another health and care-oriented project called Caring Town Totnes. So, okay, this brings us to...
What is Caring Town Totnes then? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned it, you may as well say what it is.
Goodness.
You can do it concisely, Jay.
Concisely.
Yeah.
There's so much to say, really. It's all connected, and we're doing so much.
Just say a quick bit.
Okay, really quick. So the idea behind Caring Town Totnes is that what if we could create a bit of a cooperative that could bring together caring, social enterprises that are providing care, bring them into a bit of a cooperative network to then go out and get commissions from the NHS. So relocalizing some of that healthcare provision, so to speak.
Yeah, I'd just as well, in terms of the evidence base, it's quite interesting that of the 4 sectors, that's the one we had least resource and expertise to really go into much detail. But probably as a project that spun out of this, it's certainly politically in town, it's gone the furthest. It's probably worth flagging up and reason to prioritise that. It's our biggest economic sector locally, but also it was just early days of austerity. And it was definitely looking like that was going to be right at the front line of austerity measures. So it was quite a popular move is to just bring everyone together who's involved in any way with delivering care, be it running the youth club to caring for the elderly, because obviously rural communities like us have a high incidence of elderly people living in loneliness and things.
And
so,
I've been involved.
Huh? You've been involved.
Oh,
there we go. Okay.
So we've been working with Fiona and people to look at, again, because of public health, providing that evidence base and looking at what the needs are in the town and helping to use that to get, the necessary funding.
Okay, so just to say a few words about another kind of key piece of the puzzle. So when I began, I said, one of the sort of guiding questions for us is, okay, if you want to create a new kind of economic system, you have to create the conditions for new economic actors and relationships to emerge. So we've just done this work around assessment. We've identified opportunities for change to happen, identified opportunities to kind of relocalize, create opportunities maybe to provision some of our own needs from local resources and local activities. Great. How do we get started? How can we mobilize the social capital and financial capital that already exists in our area to support entrepreneurs who are already in our community? In fact, how can we also create space for people in our community to begin thinking of themselves as possible entrepreneurs or possible investors? So we started something in 2012 we call the Local Entrepreneur Forum. And maybe just before I begin, maybe for just a couple minutes, pair up and see if you can come up with a good definition of what it means to be a local entrepreneur. Economic change. We got a lot of people in town who are like, ooh, economics, that's bad. Ooh, entrepreneurs, no. But we don't shy away from these words. Rather, we embrace them. We give them our own meaning. So I don't know if you guys came up with some really good broad definitions of entrepreneur, but we have a very broad definition of what it means to be an entrepreneur. Are you a solutionary? Are you a change maker? Are you a permaculturalist? Are you an activist? Are you an organizer? Are you somebody who wants to create something new that can be financially self-sustaining and benefit the community and be part of the solution? Then you're an entrepreneur. What we wanted to try to do with this project, the Local Entrepreneur Forum, is really catalyze a new kind of culture around this kind of entrepreneurship. And so the project itself has begun as a one-day event. We bring together everyone we can think of who's an entrepreneur, potential entrepreneur, investor, potential investor, supporter, catalyst, enabler, expert of all kinds. Bring them into a big room and try to match them up, create relationships. If you want to create change, the most important thing is creating relationships, creating networks of relationships, the most important thing. So that's part of what this day does. We create opportunities through open space for people to kind of learn what they need to learn, meet who they need to meet. And this will give you, I've got some pictures here, and this will just give you some flavor of what this looked like. So this is a poster from last year. This is another poster with people doing stuff. More posters, lots of posters. Here's Hal kind of stirring the pot, giving everybody a chance to see who's in the room. And, you know, look around at these faces and you'll see lots of different kinds of people. So men and women, young and old, really a diverse group. So the second part of the day, we do something we call the community of dragons. The community of dragons. So again, we do not shy away from words. Rather, we try to reappropriate words. So you have your dragons den and we have the community of dragons. We say, our definition of what it means to be investors is very broad. Okay? So we say everyone has a stake in what kind of local economy we have. Everyone has a stake in what kinds of businesses are going to operate in their community. We should all have a voice and we should all be able to support the kinds of businesses we want to see. So everyone can be an investor. Entrepreneurs need money. They need a business plan. That's not all they need. They need all kinds of support. There's not one entrepreneur in the world. I come from Silicon Valley, so I know a little something about it. There's not one entrepreneur in the world who's done anything without a support network behind them and lots of other folks contributing to their success. So there are all kinds of ways that people can get involved. So the second part of the day, we have something called the Community of Dragons. We have 4 or 5 entrepreneurs who we vetted. We have some criteria. They have to be entrepreneurs who are doing something that's going to benefit the community in some way. They pitch. And they pitch to the investors. Everyone's an investor and the investors respond. So I don't know what pictures you're looking at now. This is a group of high school students. They've started a chocolate cooperative. There are some other pictures around of some of the other folks who pitched.
So yeah, in that slide going around, the man in the front, he's the head of design and tech at Kevix, which is our main secondary school. Well, our only secondary school at the time.
Some of you guys might know about Grow Cycle. So they pitched at the first entrepreneur forum, and they have developed nicely. Started the first urban mushroom farm in Exeter. Argan Solutions, they're actually a tech company. They make tech monitors, so it's not just for kind of hemp and granola sorts of businesses. And but we have those too.
And just to mention Grow Cycle, they've been doing an online course. The last time I looked at the website, they're open sourcing their business model. They had some people from about 29 different countries.
Nice. New Line Brewery pitch. They make beer in the community and support lots of community activity. Transition Homes, you're going to hear about that in the next hour. Anyway, School Farm. So these folks pitch and the investors respond. I'll loan you £1,000. I'll give you £100. I'll give you £10 if someone else gives you £10. Boom, 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 the hands go up. I'll help you with your business plan. I'll give you some mentoring. I'll help you with your website. I'll help you with legal services. I'll give you 25 fruit trees. I'll give you 2.5 tons of mulch. You can use my back garden shed to store your things. I'll give you a massage. I'll make you a home-cooked meal. I'll watch your kids while you go to a meeting. So these are all the ways in which people are investing in the local economy in Totnes and these local entrepreneurs. And this does a lot of things that are really, really positive. So one is you get the practical support. 2, you show people in the community who might be thinking, oh, well, I could never start something up. Oh, well, maybe I actually could because I could get the support that I need. you give everyone a chance to participate. Participation, according to one development economist, is a fundamental human need. But we all know if we're interested in community cohesion, that's really important. So you provide a way for everyone to feel included and to participate. Well, and lastly, or maybe not lastly, but one of the other things is you get people to also think about themselves in a different way with respect to their own economic agency. So I might not be able to start up a business, but I can invest in one. I've got a bit of a pension fund. I've got some money in the bank. I could loan somebody £1,000. And maybe when I get it back, I can loan it to somebody else. And maybe because I know these people, I could give it to them in a way that's really supportive. Maybe I could share some of the risk. Maybe I could give it to them for a very low interest rate or no interest rate. So patient and friendly capital. But this is all helping to mobilize financial capital that already exists. You don't have to go to philanthropy necessarily. You don't have to go to the big banks. But this is a way to kind of catalyze the start of something, so that if we're talking about an anchor institution, maybe from this little seed can grow the kernel of a cooperative that could begin supplying food to Royal Denton and Exeter College or hospital, or might provide the seed for something like the Bank of Devon. Yeah, which actually is something that's in the works. Imagine if we had a regional bank. So after 5 years, we've done this annually for 5 years, we've supported directly 22 projects. They're all going except for I think 2 or 3. We've created about 15 new jobs. We've raised directly from the community, from the event, about £85,000, but indirectly thousands and thousands more, because if you're a business, if you've raised some money, it's easier to go out and raise more money. Hundreds of in-kind investments of all the kinds that I mentioned before, and a bit of that entrepreneurial culture we can see now is developing in Totnes. People ring us up and say, hey, I'm interested in starting a vegan cafe. What do you think? Great. Well, why don't you come into the REconomy Center? You can start working there. We can provide some support to you. And then maybe the next entrepreneur forum you can pitch. This is, I think, something else that Johnny is working on, and some folks in Bridgeport, but also I think there's Jill Westcott is talking about doing this in Exeter. They're talking about doing it in Stroud and several other places. So it's one of those models that can help to not just kind of kickstart an entrepreneurial culture, but begin to put together the kind of ecosystem that can support new economic models, whether they're freelance unions or big ambitious projects or little tiny projects or what have you.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Got to hold it there. Okay, good. So
here's Tim Crabtree, by the way. Sorry, just one more
he
thing.
responded to the chocolate request. So it's the girls from the school, and he says, "Oh, well, I know the CEO of Divine Chocolate, or the founder of Divine Chocolate. I can put you in touch." So it's nice to have a head of design and tech from your local school in the room when that sort of relationship just drops in. Yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks to our relocalised hipster Jay. Yeah.